In the 19th century, Nobel Prize winner Sir William Ramsay began an expedition through Asia Minor. Having been influenced by German rationalists who taught that the book of Acts was written in the 2nd century as an attempt to clarify the theological positions of Paul and Peter, Ramsay began his expedition in an attempt to discredit Luke as the writer of Acts and of the Scriptures in general. Ramsay and others believed that the writer of Acts had been careless regarding historical data and was not familiar with the specific geography of the 1st century. However, after having explored the regions of Asia Minor, Ramsay came to the conclusion that Luke had in fact penned the book of Acts, and that it was extremely accurate. Ramsay wrote, "Luke's history is unsurpassed in respect to its trustworthiness." Ramsay became so convinced of the historical accuracy of Acts that he became an ardent defender of Scripture. Like Sir William Ramsay, many have discovered that the Bible is an extremely accurate historical book, and that the people and places discussed in Scripture truly existed. The high priest during the trial and crucifixion of Christ was a man named Joseph Caiaphas. Little is known of him apart from what is recorded in the New Testament and in the writings of the 1st century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, who mentions that Caiaphas's 5 sons and one of his sons-in-laws also became high priest.
Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Jesus by some sly way and kill him. Matthew 26:3-4.
Recently, the ancient house that belonged to Caiaphas has been discovered by archaeologists. Additionally, an ossuary box was discovered also belonging to Caiaphas. Ossuary boxes were used as burial boxes in the 1st century. Traditionally, the body of the deceased was laid in the tomb for about a year, allowing the body to decay. Then a family member would gather up the bones and place them in the ossuary box. Often, several family members shared the same bone box. In late 1990, while building a water park in Jerusalem, a cave was discovered containing this burial box. Inscribed on the side and back were the words, "Joseph, son of Caiaphas." The box contained the remains of 2 infants, one child around the age of 2 to 5 years, a teenage boy, an adult woman, and a man approximately 60 years old, the bones of the high priest Caiaphas. After further study, the remains were buried by archaeologists. This discovery clearly establishes the historical existence of the high priest mentioned in the Gospels. Pontius Pilate, the vicious Roman governor who washed his hands of the crucifixion of Christ, has likewise been established as a real historical person due to archaeological finds. In 1961, in Caesarea, this limestone box was unearthed by archaeologists. The inscription makes reference to Pontius Pilate and states, "To the Honorable Tiberius, Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judah, had dedicated." This stone inscription has moved the man Pontius Pilate from the pages of history into modern reality, establishing the man who sat in judgment over Jesus as a living human being. In 1941, the Israeli archaeologist Eliezer Sukenik from the Hebrew University discovered a rock tomb in the Kidron Valley in eastern Jerusalem. Sukenik would later become famous for acquiring the first Dead Sea Scrolls for the State of Israel. Pottery inside the tomb enabled him to date it to the middle of the 1st century. In the tomb were ossuary boxes. Several were inscribed with Greek names, one even bearing the proclamation, Yeshua Yeho, Jesus is Jehovah. One of the ossuaries reads, Alexandros, son of Simon. On the back of the ossuary there is another inscription where the writer had clearly made a mistake and started again. On the lid of the ossuary there was a third inscription with the name Cyrene. Sukenik was able to establish that this bone box belonged to Alexander, the son of Simon of Cyrene, the man who carried the cross for Christ. Once again, archaeology brought a character from the 1st century into modern times in a very real way. In Romans 16:23, the Apostle Paul mentions in passing Aretas, the city commissioner of Corinth. When archaeologists began to rediscover the ancient city of Corinth, a stone pavement was unearthed with an inscription reading, "Aretas, commissioner of public works, laid this pavement at his own expense." Not only is the same person found in Romans mentioned, but his position as a city leader is also stated. Additionally, the city of Corinth revealed this stone pillar bearing the name of Theophilus, the individual to whom Luke wrote his Gospel and the book of Acts. These finds not only prove the existence of the ancient Greek city, but 2 men mentioned in the Bible. Two remarkable finds have been revealed regarding the Apostle Peter. When the ancient city of Capernaum, Peter's hometown, was excavated, the remains of his home were discovered. The name of Simon Peter is also found inscribed on the walls of this home, along with prayers to Jesus Christ for various Christians of the early church. This find brings archaeological evidence for the existence of one of the pillars of the New Testament church. In 1953, on the Mount of Olives, a cave tomb was discovered. Outside the cave was etched the sign of a cross, establishing this gravesite belonged to early Christians. Inside the tomb were several ossuary boxes. Names found on the boxes read almost like a who's who from the Gospels. The bone box bearing the names Mary, Martha, and Lazarus were found together. Other names found on these burial boxes include Jairus, Joseph, Judah, Matthias, Salome, Simon, and Zechariah, all of whom are mentioned in the New Testament Gospels. Noted archaeologists have dated these ossuaries to the 1st century. Additionally, many of them bore a tribute to Jesus, providing additional evidence that this was the final resting place for some noted biblical characters. But perhaps the one that caused the most controversy was the one with the inscription Shimeon Bar Yonah, Simon, son of Jonah, the New Testament name for the Apostle Peter. Noted archaeologist and Catholic priest Father J.T. Milik, who was one of the original archaeologists who worked with the Dead Sea Scrolls, proclaimed these ossuary boxes to be genuine and, despite the teachings of his church, believed the real tomb and bones of Peter to be in Jerusalem at this cave and not in Rome. Biblical cities that are mentioned in the New Testament had been lost to antiquity, causing many critics to disparage the Bible as historical truth. However, biblical archaeology has vindicated the historical accuracy of the New Testament with the excavation of those cities that were once lost. In 1835, archaeologist William T. Hamilton discovered the lost city of Colossae under this hill in eastern Turkey. These are the remains of the city to which the Apostle Paul wrote his letter to the Colossians. The 7 churches mentioned in the book of Revelation were located in cities that likewise have been rediscovered through modern archaeology in what is now present-day Turkey. The ancient ruins of these cities prove that John was writing to real people in real locations. The 7 cities are Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Not only has the existence of these biblical cities been established, but their Christian heritage has also been exposed through archaeological excavations. For example, in the city of Ephesus, among the ruins was discovered the site of a 1st century church complete with a baptistry. This is the very spot where many were baptized to whom both John in the Revelation and Paul in his epistle to the Ephesians wrote. In the Revelation, John wrote to the church at Pergamos,
"To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it." Revelation 2:17.
Among the ruins of the ancient city of Pergamos is this pillar. Inscribed on it in Greek are those very same words from the book of Revelation. In the book of Acts, chapter 16, verses 12 through 39, we are told of the Roman colony of Philippi in northern Greece. Luke informs us of the main marketplace where the magistrates convene court, of a city gate by a river, and of a local jail where Paul and Silas were placed for preaching the gospel. Archaeology has established that at one time a Roman colony existed at Philippi, that it was located in northern Greece, that there was a marketplace with a magistrate court, that the city gate was located by a river, the same river where Lydia and other converts were baptized, and that there was a local jail which showed signs of earthquake damage as described in Acts 16, verse 26. We also know from the book of Philippians that the residents of Philippi appreciated Olympic-type sports because of Paul's reference to racing, Philippians 3:14. The ruins of Philippi reveal a coliseum where sporting events such as races took place. As with so many other examples from the book of Acts, it is clear that the writer had visited these historic locations and that they were very real cities. The book of Acts also reveals that Paul, while on his way to stand trial in Rome, was in a shipwreck, yet the prisoners were all saved. In Acts 28, we are told that they swam to the island of Malta. Biblical archaeologist Bob Cornick also followed the same course and has discovered the remains of a first-century Roman prison ship that was sunk off the shore of the island of Malta. Again, historical evidence supports what is written in the pages of Scripture. All of this adds up. Archaeological evidence has proven the existence of the places and cities mentioned in the Bible. Likewise, archaeology has proven that men and women mentioned in the New Testament were real individuals. Many of them died with praises to Jesus Christ placed near their final resting places, demonstrating that they not only believed the gospel, but believed it even in death. The truth of the resurrection of Christ was something they carried with them to the grave, mainly because they had seen the resurrected Lord. If the places and people of the New Testament were real, we can in the same way accept that the events were real. Once again, faith is established by historical and archaeological facts.